Welcome back to another episode of Storyteller. One of the themes that I'm going to have in several of these stories are people who made a difference in my life at a really key time when I kind of really needed somebody to make a difference. So this is that kind of story, and I'm going to entitle this Rescued from Sticking. Rescued from Sticking. So back in, let's see, this would be about 1983. I was 14 years old, and it was time for me to get a job. At least that's what my folks said. Now, I'm very thankful for my folks, and I'm very thankful for almost everything they did for me. And that summer, I was like, okay, big boy, time to get a job, time to make money. So I went to work at the place where just about every 14-year-old in Berrien Springs either worked or they knew somebody who worked there. And that was Twixwood. Remember Twixwood? Owned by Tom Kimmel, classmate of my dad's, actually, in high school. And Tom ran a ground cover nursery, and a wholesale only. And man, they grew and they shipped ground covers all over the Midwest, the kind of Michigan, Illinois Midwest. And so I went to work at Twixwood. And the first summer, most of what I did was called sticking. All right, and this is propagation, but it goes like this. The big kids sit over there on the other side of the Morton building, we called it, metal structure building. And they sit over there by the radio. They control the radio, and they process stuff, large volumes of cuttings that have come in from the field, and then they create little cuttings that then come over to the 14-year-olds where I sat in a whole table, this giant table of 14-year-old girls. Okay, that's your first clue as to the condition that I was living in. And we would take these little cuttings, like vinca or myrtle. We would take these little cuttings, you would strip the bottom leaf off at the node, and you would take it and you would stick it in a tray of dirt. And the tray already had little holes to kind of show you where to stick it. That's why it was called sticking, right? And if you were lucky, actually the myrtle, when we did that, you would actually take it, you had one extra step. You would take it, you would dip it in root hormone powder, rooting powder, root hormone, and then you would stick it in the dirt. Oh, whole extra step, whole new diverse process there. And you would do this for 9 hours a day. And I would sit there as a naive 14-year-old boy, listening to the 14-year-old girls talk. Now, these are teenagers, and they're girls, and I make no apology. 14-year-old teenage girls have conversation that will drive you absolutely mad. And so, really quickly, I hated it. I absolutely hated it. And I worked all that summer. Now, there were a couple guys, and I'll have some stories about some of those guys who helped to rescue me. But I got through that summer, and then I actually worked into the fall where it got way better because all of those 14-year-old girls quit working because they couldn't handle school and work while I could. So I'd go to school, till 3 o'clock, and then I would walk to Twixwood, which was about a 20-minute walk at my pace, and I would work, and I worked way into the fall, and that's where I got to be really good friends with really cool guys like Rocky Reinholtz. I'll tell you about Rocky. And then in the winter, then there's just really nothing to do, so I couldn't work. So then I started again in the summer, and I was back to the same thing. I'm telling you, time has never, ever in my entire 58 years of life has ever gone so slow. I mean, from punching in at 7:30 till the 10 o'clock 15-minute break was like 16 hours. I swear. It was so horrible. And what actually made it worse, here's what made it worse. My dad is a certified public accountant, and my dad was pretty cool. He actually always owned a Corvette. For just decades, he always owned a Corvette. And in that time, in that era, he had a 70, I think it was a 74 or 76 white Corvette. The classic look. Remember the big fenders? You know, just curves, baby. Nice car. Nice car. He would take me to work because he could go to work really early. And so he would take me to work. We'd drive down the hill into Twixwood. It was kind of down on the river flats. And he'd drop me off, and people started to make fun of me. There was one guy in particular, it was Wallach. I call him out here a little bit. It was the younger Wallach, Kurt or Kent. I don't remember. I should probably look that up. Anyway, I remember he was kind of a ringleader, and he started making fun of me. He was a year older than me, and he was kind of a tough guy, you know, and so he started making fun of me. Well, what are you doing here, little boy? Huh? You got a Corvette, huh? Are you going to get your hands all dirty? And he was a jerk. All right. But I will say that some years later, he and I had to work, you know, when we were adults, you know, we're like 25 or something. We had to work together on some, I don't remember what it was. And he was cool, you know, so he was just kind of going through a dipshit time in his life. But there was this other guy, Todd Keebler. You guys remember Todd Keebler? So Todd Keebler was an ass. Todd was a good bit older, Todd was probably 4 or 5 years older because I never overlapped him in high school. He was the son of one of the teachers I had in grade school, Mr. Keebler, who nobody liked because Mr. Keebler was like 350 pounds, and we had a lot of jokes about Mr. Keebler. I'm so thankful I was in Mr. LeCount's homeroom. You guys remember Mr. LeCount? He looked like a monkey, but he was the greatest teacher ever. Okay, so this was Mr. Keebler's son, Todd. And Todd was like 18. You know, I'm 14, he's like 18 or 19, and Todd should have known better. And Todd starts making fun of me too. You know, he'd come over and he'd look at what everybody was doing, all these 14-year-old girls, you know, just doing this, and he'd pick on me. Like, he was some kind of supervisor, you know, and he'd pick on me. You know, what are you doing, Glenn? Looks like you're doing nothing. You know, and so, you know, if you know Todd Keebler, tell him Glenn Poole still thinks he's an ass. Okay, because I don't know, I hope he grew out of it. But anyway, so it's a bad summer, right? I mean, surrounded by and being made fun of, you know, by a guy who's a year older than me, being made fun of and given a hard time by like a 19-year-old, you know, important supervisor dude. Not a good year. It was actually the first time in my life where I was depressed. I didn't know what depression was. I didn't know I was depressed. I was not very functional, actually, for quite a while that summer. Anyway, got through the summer, got through the fall, winter, went back to work, and it's starting all over again, you know. The next summer, man, it's sticking again. Ugh. Now, I had a couple friends, Cindy Rasmussen, sweet classmate of mine, and Trevor Malem, good friend of mine, and they worked for Russell. Now, Russell was the grower. Russell was responsible for what happened to the plants after they left Morton 1, right? So they go out to a greenhouse. He's responsible for growing. He's the fertilizer guy. He's the watering guy. And so Russell had Cindy and Trevor working for him to just help irrigate everything. And I'd see Trevor and Cindy come in at 7:30 in the morning, and I'd sit down at the sticking table and I'd watch them get their assignments from Russell and then leave. And I didn't see them the rest of the day. And I always wondered what goes on in that little office of Russell's, and how do you get to be a part of that cool people where you don't have to be in this horrible building. And I remember the day when Russell came over to me. Like, I'm just sitting there. Holy shit. I can't believe I'm doing this today. I got to do this again. Russell came over to me and he goes, hey, Pool, come here. Russell never talked to me, right? I was nobody. Okay. So I followed him and we went into the office. He closed the door. He said, you know, we've got all those new greenhouses, all those little greenhouses. Basically, they're high tunnels. You know, they're, gosh, I don't know. They're like 12 feet wide and 50 feet long. You know, they're one little path down the middle. He's like, we got 20 new ones of these, and we got several. And I really don't have anybody to do the irrigation for this. And I'm wondering if you'd like the job. And what it would mean would be that you come to work, you punch in, and then you just go out to your section. And every morning you walk through, you define what needs to be watered that day. So you got to learn to check moistures and kind of predict moistures for that day. And then you need to water throughout the day so that nothing dries out and nothing dies. And you also need to coordinate with Trevor and with Cindy because they have a certain number of houses they need to water, each of them separately, and then you'll have a certain amount. And so we only have a certain amount of pump capacity. So we have limitations. So, you know, if she's running 4 and Trevor's running 4, well, that means you can only run 4. Okay, so you can't turn them all on at the same time. So there's a little coordination there. He said, would you like to do that? And I was like, hell yeah. I mean, I didn't know the word hell back then. I was like, yeah, I mean, is the sky blue, Russell? Yes. And so, all right. He's like, come on, I'll show you around. And so he did. He showed me, you know, he took me out. I don't really remember this part, but, you know, he showed me how to turn the waters on. And that was it, man. So that was the summer of I was done with my freshman year. I worked there that summer and then like the next 3 summers. I was so motivated even that first summer that I rode my bike to work and back every day. And that was like 7 miles one way, going uphill, going home, you know. And man, I mean, on Fridays, we were Sabbath keepers, so we didn't work on Saturdays. So Friday was always a big day, man. We had to make sure everything would survive 2 days because we'd get done on Friday. Nothing would be watered on Saturday, and then we'd come back on Sunday and water. So I was working like 6 days a week, and usually on Friday, I was there till about 7 or 8 p.m. before the sun went down, you know, before the Sabbath. I was just dedicated to my job because I had been given responsibility and I had been rescued from the wallet kid and from the Keebler jerk and from 14-year-old girl boy crazy conversation. And it was amazing. And I actually told Russell years later, I'm like, dude, you rescued my life. Thank you. So, you know, I've already told Russell this, and but, you know, if he ever watches this or you know Russell first, you know, let him know. He's immortalized, man. I mean, I just appreciate so much. One person, I don't know how he picked me. I don't know how he noticed. I don't know how it happened. But the dude rescued me when I was 15 years old and evaporated my depression, and I became a responsible employee and a very productive employee. And to this day, I can't stand it to see a plant dry and starting to wilt. I like panic. So that's my story. Thank you, Russell. And thank you for my true friends who I had at Twixwood. And that's it for Rescued from Stickin'. Hope you'd enjoyed that. You don't have to click like. You don't have to subscribe because I'm just going to keep these stories coming for people who find YouTube 1,000 years from now. We'll see you next time.